So we might kick things off. So welcome everyone to session 1 of the Women in Engineering Alumni Ambassador Council's professional development series called Challenging Yourself. So today we're going to be predominantly focusing on our theme, which is Behold the Early Career Hustle. And we've got myself, my name is Karen, and we've also got our speaker Samira here. And we'll be introducing ourselves a little bit further down in a couple of slides. But first of all, we'd just like to say welcome to everyone for joining, and hopefully this is a good session for everyone and you enjoy listening to us share our experiences and stories of starting our engineering journey in Australia and in this current climate. So we'd just like to start off with, if my hierarchy works, just a very quick acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet today. I pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. And we'd like to greatly recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. All right. And the next slide is just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm sure a lot of you have all seen this slide with the bunch of webinars that have been going on this year and last year. So just a reminder to keep yourself on mute while the webinar's running, just to prevent any background noise, and also just to keep your videos off to reduce the load on the bandwidth. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during the session, please feel free to type it into the chat box. We've got Prue, our lovely representative from UQ, who will be monitoring the chat box, and she'll be looking through and seeing the types of questions that come through in preparation for the Q&A session that will be happening towards the end of today's session. And lastly, we'll be doing a couple of interactive polls and questions throughout the session. And just for the sake of time, we'll flash up the question and keep it up for a couple of seconds to let people answer, and then we'll also show up the results of the questions as well. So just keep in mind that there will be a few questions dotted throughout today's session, and hopefully everyone can participate. So that'd be great. Awesome. And so next slide is, who are we? So I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Karen Zho. I am a graduate process engineer at APA Group, and my company specializes in the energy and energy infrastructure sector. I studied a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering at UQ, and I graduated fairly recently towards the end of 2019. And I'm also a member of the UQ Women in Engineering Alumni Ambassador Council, and I joined in 2020. Yeah, and I'll hand over to our wonderful speaker, Samira.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm really glad to be here today. So a little bit about me. I'm Samira Tollo. I wear a few different hats. So one of the hats that I'm quite proud of is my responsibility with my startup. So I'm CTO and co-founder of Elbaite, which is a newer kind of cryptocurrency exchange. And I'll explain a little bit about what we do in the later slides. And also I consult in the blockchain team at IBM. And I am a UQ alumni as well. I studied electrical engineering and I graduated, I think, Karen, you and I graduated at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Did we have the same ceremony? Yeah.
Yeah, December. I think we started the same time and went through, for the audience, Samira and I went through uni together. So we've known each other for a couple of years and here we are.
Yeah, so it'll be great to show the differences that between the career directions we've taken. We've both taken really drastic different paths. So today's session will be really focusing on the options that is out there for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll just jump on to our first audience question, just to have a gauge on what everyone who's attending has been through. And we've got the first question here. Are you completing or have you completed a structured graduate program? So we'll just give a couple of seconds to answer.
yeah, this one will kind of help us frame how we talk in today's session, so we can understand, yeah, our audience a little bit.
Yeah. Alrighty. And so we see that majority of the people attending, they're all doing a structured grad program. Nice. And then we've got the next question, which is a bit more open-ended, is how would you rate your experience from 1 to 10, with 10 being living the absolute dream every single day?
I'll be key to see how many 10s we have.
10 with an exclamation mark. That's the big focus. Oh, nice. Pretty solid 7. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. 7's a very good number.
It is. Oh, I'm glad everyone's almost living the dream every day. A few rainy days, I'm sure, sometimes, but 7's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for participating in the first question, and your responses are going to really help, like Samira mentioned, shape how we phrase, how we share our information today. And that leads on to our first topic, which is forging your own path. So it sounds like a lot of the attendees, and my arrow is not working to go to the next slide, there we go. So it sounds like a lot of our attendees have recently just started their journey into the engineering industry, and forging your own path into your career is one of the key critical components about your early journey towards your future pathways. And like Samira touched on earlier, her and I, we definitely have gone through a very different style of entering engineering. It's been completely different. And I'd like to just start off by letting Samira share a bit about how she has started her journey into engineering.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe I'll start off with what I did at university. So I studied electrical engineering really for a purpose. It was really because I wanted to be part of renewable energy. I wanted to be part of that change. I wanted to be involved with the team that creates, mass renewable energy adoption globally, and even at Australia level. So it was always a passion game for me. It was never about anything else. It was just always about my drive to be involved with projects that have a global impact and are using innovative new technologies. So those two themes were always the reason why I did anything. But where I am right now, it's definitely not what I had intended. I am not working in renewable energy currently at the moment. I'm doing something completely different. So let me explain how that happened. So I'm, as I had touched on earlier, I have my own business, and I also now work with IBM in their blockchain team. How did I get through that? So firstly, with the startup, we actually started it while I was still in university. So it's me and my older brother. We've started the business together. It was mainly started by his ideas and his experience with the cryptocurrency industry. I had come in with my own interest from blockchain, from a renewable energy stance, actually. So it was the perfect match. He came in with his financial background and his interest in the cryptocurrency as a financial asset, while I was looking at the technology behind it, and it was super interesting for me. So as this timeline states, it's been a very long journey. So all the way 2018 till now. I'll touch on a few of the key milestones. So we started our MVP all the way in 2018. So for all of you that don't know what an MVP is a minimal viable product. Basically, it's the skeletons of an idea or a business. And the whole purpose of you building this MVP is so that you can experiment and test your hypothesis for your business using minimal funding to create that MVP product. So that's why here I've also noted that it was bootstrapped. So bootstrap means that it was self-funded. So my brother and I, we both co-contributed financially towards that. But that's the whole purpose of an MVP, right? It's to create a cheaper way to do experiments. So fasting forward, I guess, to 2019, to my graduation date, I was lucky enough to participate in UQ's Singapore startup adventure. So that was with Idea Hub. So while I was in uni, what I made sure to do was take every single opportunity that UQ provided for me and just go for it always. So that was one of the highlights of uni for me, actually. So I got to experience what startup life was in Singapore, and it was fantastic. And it really inspired me what we can do here in Australia, just because I feel like Singapore, they're years ahead in terms of their entrepreneurship mentality. It's a lot more common, whereas in Australia, it's the typical grad role is still the favorite pathway to take after university, whereas it was kind of opposite in Singapore. There were so many young entrepreneurs doing what I'm doing as well. So yeah, it was great to see that. And then so all throughout the launch and all of the busyness through that, the business has grown to an amazing point. We are in our pre-series A raising round at the moment, so that's a huge milestone to achieve. So that basically means that we've gathered enough evidence to prove our hypothesis that this is a business that does generate revenue, and this is a business that is viable in the greater market, and that's going through the legal hurdles, the banking hurdles, all of the other fun stuff that comes with.
Yeah, you don't learn that in Eng 1100 for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a huge milestone that we've achieved, and we're super proud of that. And amongst all that, during COVID, I also joined the IBM blockchain team. And then I guess we'll talk a little bit how my experience with startup has helped my journey within IBM. So if we can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So throughout all of that, there were some key major takeaways that I've had. One of them being is that it's really given me a greater appreciation about knowing the outer landscape for your technology. It will help you create a more relevant technology. So if you have all of the legal understandings, all of the business requirements, all of the other topics, it really does help you create a more relevant technology. And that's what we want, right? We're engineers, we're good at making things happen, but we need that outside understanding. And so I really got an appreciation doing that with my business. Community and mentorship, it's been the key to my growth. I was just in university, started out just as anybody does in their early career. We've got so much excitement, but the lack of experience, you can't just get that by reading one book. Sometimes you really do need to go to the people that have been in the industry for 40 plus years. They're the ones that have the insights that you don't. And we can't be too arrogant to think that we can do the whole thing by ourselves. So community and mentorship has really helped me with that. And on a positive note, I've noted that, generally speaking, people have been very, very encouraging of young and passionate change makers. So it's really inspired me to really try and inspire other young people to give this a go as well, this journey in entrepreneurship. I really would like to see more young people creating tech businesses. I think we are smart enough to do it. We just need to have that little bit of bravery and courage to give it a go. So yeah, I'm just trying to leverage off the great experience that I've had, and I want to encourage other people to do the same. And then the last point here, adoption of new technology is quite complicated. I think we did learn that during university, but I never really understood, what that meant. And so now that I'm fully immersed in blockchain, which is still quite a newer technology, I'm really understanding how complicated the journey to mass adoption is. It's not just about educating people, it's about legislation, it's about, it's a lot of shift that needs to be happening to get mass adoption of a new technology, which I'm learning as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. During uni, did you ever think, when you first started in first year in the lecture theatre, did you ever think you would head towards an entrepreneurial path? Has it always been a passion of yours to pursue your interests?
No, actually, yeah. So it's just really kind of come out of nowhere for me. While I was in first year, it was always about who's doing cool stuff. I want to be right.
Yeah.
Because I joined engineering because I wanted to create cool things that created mass change globally. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Short answer.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's an awesome journey you've had, Samira. And I just remember watching the journey of Elbaite and then seeing it take off through like social media and LinkedIn and other things. And I was just watching in awe the whole journey go through. And it's so cool to hear, because it's so different compared to the traditional pathway, which is what I took and what I'll jump into in a bit. And yeah, it's great. It's crazy and also great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, so would love to hear about your journey and what you've loved about it and some of the benefits that you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the poll, I think a lot of people who are attending right now have taken a similar pathway to me. So I have taken a very, very traditional entry pathway into engineering. It's one which I guess we get taught a lot about or exposed to a lot at uni, which is joining a structured grad program at a company. And I think going through university, I knew that I knew I needed to join a structured grad program, because just looking at my areas of strength and my areas of weaknesses, I could see that some areas where I was a bit weaker in was I didn't really have a strong passion or drive to do one specific thing in particular. I kind of wanted to gain a broad experience and a broad exposure of all the different sort of avenues that engineering could take. And but I also knew that strengths were that I had a pretty strong work ethic, and I was also a really good team player. And because of that, I knew that I wanted to get an entry into engineering, which allowed me to see different parts of the business and also have just that extra little bit of support and hand holding, because I really didn't know exactly what type of engineering and what were my passions, like what were truly my passions, because it's really easy to sit and say, yes, I'm really passionate about this aspect and this aspect, but are you really, or is it just sort of the flavor of the month and then you're just in it because everyone else is? So because of that, I chose to join the structured program at APA, the company that I'm at the moment. And the reason why I ended up choosing APA was because as a company, it has a diverse portfolio of work. It has renewable assets, it has gas pipeline, it has power stations. And because of that, I knew that I could get a solid exposure into so many different parts of engineering. But at the same time, I guess some of the not spoken about, I guess the cons, I wouldn't really call it cons because I think that's quite a strong word, but some aspects of joining a grad program, which might not be super shiny and bright, is the fact that if you're joining a big company that has a huge graduate intake, sometimes you can get lost in the sea of graduates and you're just another young person in the company. I haven't personally experienced that at APA because our intake is reasonably small, or at least it was for my cohort. But what I did find is that sometimes, especially if the grad program is quite new, which was my experience, some teams and some leaders, they're just not too sure exactly where you sit on the skill level. They're kind of a bit like, can I get her to do this piece of work? Is this above her skill level? Is this below her skill level? So sometimes you kind of get stuck doing a lot of admin-y phrase. And I like the phrase gradmin, which I heard someone mention, and I've totally stolen that phrase because I thought it was really catchy. So oftentimes you do get stuck with some of the more, I suppose, easy and a bit tedious tasks, which the senior people don't really have the time to do. And at times, like I mentioned, it can get tedious, but at the same time, it's also a good leveraging point because you really get to figure out how the processes work within a company, where to find information, how to properly document it, how to properly store it. And oftentimes that's been a big strength of mine because I know instantly if a request for work comes through now, I know instantly, okay, I start off by looking for information here. If that doesn't work, there's this alternate pathway here. If I want to find this document, I know I need to talk to this person or I need to go through this pathway. And it's really helped expedite the process of like getting a deeper understanding of how the little intricacies of the company work. And I guess another area to watch out for is if you are in a grad program, which lets you rotate around to the different areas of the business, oftentimes you might get stuck just rotating around to teams which do work that you are comfortable with. So you might end up just rotating around the same types of teams and not really getting enough exposure. So just being aware when it does come to choosing your next rotation time, just be aware that you want to try and challenge yourself and do something completely different. And I guess for me personally, I was able to realize that I need to challenge myself and try and do as much different types of work as I possibly can. I realized that through finding a mentor, which is also, I think, a tip that Samira mentioned earlier before. And I really can't stress how important it is, how good it is to have a mentor who's been in industry, who's been where you are, to have them share their insights and to sort of just express advice or whatever you need in the moment to help you get over a hurdle or a challenge, or just to hear what they have to say because they've been working in the industry for a while. And yeah, that's very quick flash of my pathway into engineering. And yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, Karen, you were quite active during university with your involvement in women in engineering.
Yes.
How do you think those experiences helped you within your grad role? Because I'm sure it had.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think it predominantly helped me in terms of building up my confidence and building up my ability to communicate well and communicate effectively. And from that experience, it really translated heavily into when I was interviewing for roles, because I'm sure everyone's been through an interview. They can be extremely tough. And when you get nervous, sometimes the words just don't come out super well. So I think with my experience doing women in engineering through uni, where I had to present in front of high school students who can be very tough audiences for sure, it taught me a lot about confidence and improving my presentation style. So that was pretty good. Yeah. Awesome. So I think we have another audience question next, which sort of ties into what we were saying before about entering into engineering. So once you're in and once you have started your first career, the next most important part is directing your career in the direction that you want it to take and getting the experiences that you want. So a bit of an open-ended question as well. Do you think you're getting the experience that you want in all the areas that you're passionate about?
Yeah, this question I think ties well with the question of, do you really know what you are passionate about, and what do you want to get involved with?
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, wow.
interesting. Well, I think that the next topic that Sarah and I will talk about will really help everyone in the audience who is actively trying to direct their career in a journey that benefits them a bit more. And it is the ever-present topic for a young engineer or a young professional, which is, if my mouse will work, confidence. So how do you break out of your engineering introverted shell? How do you build up the confidence to stand up for the work you're doing and validate it as a young engineer? And also another point to that is, how do you have the confidence to have a challenging conversation with a leader or a manager if you want to take your career in a completely different direction? And also, lastly, the importance of building up your self-brand through things like LinkedIn and posting and being collaborative and sharing your knowledge. And I think, Samira, I'd love to hear your experience and your tips about building up confidence, because you definitely had to, I'm sure, have some challenging conversations when you were pitching your idea for Elbaite to the investors, and especially probably when you were starting the MVP stage. How did you have the confidence to validate and talk about your idea to people who have had probably years of experience in industry? So yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, confidence, I think, is the key ingredient to achieving what you want. So definitely a very relevant topic for us to talk about. I did have to go through an identity change, I think. So when I was in uni, I was all focused on engineering. I was like, if you're going to talk to me about anything else, I don't care, I'm not interested. Give me the tech details and that's it. So I was very, I guess, this is probably coming into the next topic though. So I was very engineering ego biased, right? So when I was pitching to people outside of engineering, that's when I got nervous, actually. So I would get nervous in front of the business leaders, in front of the investors and all of that. So, and how did I overcome that? Well, to be honest, you just got to keep exposing yourself to that environment. Just keep putting yourself out there. I made so many strange comments and like bad pitches. It was terrible. But the one thing that got me through it was actually my brother's encouragement. And it's so great that I did have an older, he's only 3 years older than me, but somebody that I do look up to that is outside of engineering. And for him to give me the outside perspective, he was telling me, Samira, come on, you're the one that did the grunt work of the research behind this. Be confident in what you've done. The people that you're presenting to, they're curious. You are the expert on this topic rather than them. So yeah, really having just the understanding that you have put in the work, so back it up. And then, so the other aspect of that was quite challenging was the fact that I was really young, and then to pitch in front of an older generation, and especially in Australia with the investment environment as it is right now, is traditionally you'd be in your mid-30s after having a career in something, and then you've realized a solution to a problem, and then that's when you start your business. And so that's the investment environment, and that's what they're used to, being pitched to by that mid-30s, mid-career, midlife age range. And so when I come in, literally in uni and pitching an idea, it was difficult for them to kind of have that trust in my skills or in my knowledge, and fair enough, right? And so to overcome that, I needed to build up my network. I needed other people to back me up as well. that's the only way that I found was like really, really effective for me. So I started connecting myself to the industry, started speaking to to people in the startup space and to the blockchain space, not wanting anything except for them to just have a conversation and bounce ideas off with. And then now that I had all these connections, I'm able to go to these investor meetings and say that I know this person, I know that person, and this is the comments that they've given me. So you get that social proof as well. So if anybody else runs into the challenge of like, how do you overcome being a young, passionate person with an idea, I think the best way to overcome it is actually recruiting other people to back you up as well. That's my hot tip. What about you, Karen? What's your advice on this?
So my advice is probably very similar to yourself, because I am definitely not a natural presenter and speaker, and I am sort of slowly improving it just by putting myself out there and signing up for these opportunities to present, and also not only at work but also in extracurricular activities like for the council here today. But sometimes what I've learned about myself through self-reflection is that my confidence really depends on how comfortable I feel. So whether that is making sure that if I'm about to make a challenging phone call, I try to get myself in a comfortable environment, whether that is going to a private quiet room by myself in the office so that I don't have distractions, or I'm not worrying about like, oh, what is, this person who's sitting next to me, I wonder what he's thinking about my conversation. What is he going to be judging me for the words I'm using? So things like that, making myself comfortable by going to those quiet rooms, or just in general preparing a little bit before a phone call or any one-on-one chat like that. So putting out dot points of what is my objective of this chat, what do I want to get out of it, and any other points that sort of good reminders to keep myself on track and not distracted or not led astray if the other person were to start passionately talking about a different side topic. But at the same time, I think it's also knowing when you need help to build up that confidence. So I guess an example is I have had to present topics at work in front of leaders, and it can be incredibly daunting because you're there about presenting your work, which you've spent countless hours on, and you're not too sure if it's going to be received well or not. And in this instance, like I mentioned before, my confidence ties in heavily with how comfortable I feel. In this instance, I reached out to help to my supervisor and said, hey, I would really appreciate it if you could just come and sit in this meeting with me in the background. I'm not asking you to present, but just to be there so I know that someone who is on my side is there to back me up if, for example, I get a spicy question or an interesting comment that I'm just not 100% sure how to answer or prepared to answer. So knowing when to reach out for help is also a big tip for me, to have a supporter with you if you are able to bring that person along.
Yeah, that's pretty similar and interesting, I guess, with the having somebody else on your side.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely feel that whenever I do pitches by myself, I'm a lot more nervous. So,
yeah.
But when I'm with my brother and we're bouncing the different topics, his business knowledge and my tech knowledge, it's a much more confident pitch. So I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Totally fine to do that.
Yeah. And how much do you think self-branding came into you building those connections with people and having that social network to back you up? How important do you think LinkedIn was, and other avenues like that?
Yeah, I think I touched on a little bit before with me having the challenge of trying to prove myself as a young entrepreneur. The way that to battle that is that self-brand. And of course, there was the social proof, but then there's the the online proof that you can bring, and LinkedIn was just fabulous for that. Not only am I able to just post about what I'm doing and all of the good news, but also I get to be connected with other amazing people. So one thing that I always hear when people are not active on LinkedIn is, oh, I don't want to show off. Oh, I don't want to be boastful. I'm going, come on, like, why not just do it? Be boastful, show all of your success, because if you are not your own cheerleader, who is going to be your cheerleader? Exactly. So you're doing yourself a disservice by not showing all of the great things that you are doing. And one thing that I think us young engineers, what we lack is, because we're in our little engineering circle most of the time, we always kind of think, oh, that person's a lot smarter than me. Oh, their project is a lot cooler than mine. Mine's not as, we're a small fish. Sorry, we're a small pool, you know? There's whole other industries that don't know about anything about engineering. So the more that we broadcast, the more that we share, the more collaboration that it can come as well. But yeah, I don't like the comment that people say, oh no, I'm going to be too showing offy on LinkedIn. Do it. Be a show off.
Exactly. That's a really good point. And I think it ties really nicely with our next topic, which I think both of us were sort of touching on a little bit through what we were saying before, which is, how do you break out of the engineering ego? Which is, because I suppose at uni, we are oftentimes exposed heavily to the technical side of engineering. So the why of why something happens. So you're sitting in there learning about why a fluid flows like that. Why do circuits need to be hooked up in a specific way? Why do the forces on the beams behave like that? Oftentimes, because of that exposure, we get stuck to prioritizing this technical experience and being and building up that ego about trying to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. But sometimes you can be pigeonholing yourself because you're not considering the broader soft skills, which I've listed a couple of examples, things like business management, compliance, government, regulatory, statutory skills, and things like that. And I think, Samira, you've definitely had a lot more exposure than I have in terms of setting up your business and with your brother and all of that. So I was wondering if you could share any tips and tricks or anecdotes that you've had in this space.
Yeah, so breaking out of the engineering ego is definitely one of the personality shifts that I've had to go through, one of the growth phases that I had to go through. And it was quite tough to get out of that, really, because, you know, all my life, I wanted to be an engineer since I was 8 years old, right? So all my life I was like, I am an engineer, blah, 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 blah. And then so when it came time to understand all of the other business requirements, legal requirements, how do we create a banking relationship, all of these critical pieces of knowledge that I had no idea about, I had to spend, to be honest, more time than the technical on, right? So it was definitely a personality shift that I had to make, and I think it was definitely for the better, because what I've kind of understood, and we all know this while we are studying, is we're creating a piece of technology that we want people to use, that we want to actually create an effect, right? Either it's more efficient, more simple, so all of those great things that we're trying to do as engineers. But if we don't have the greater context of what's happening outside of just the technical limitations, then we're creating a technology that's probably irrelevant for the real world. So the more that we expose ourselves to conversations outside of technology and engineering, I think it enables us to create more relevant solutions. So the things that helped me through that is networking outside of engineering networks. So, I mean, I found it going through the startup, events they've got these pitches and there's this collaboration happening and there's this announcement and all. So I went to all of them every single night. I was going to an event, just trying to understand what other people are doing. I would encourage that if you have access to something like that, definitely broaden those conversations out by going to community events. They're the easiest gateway. But if you're like more of an introverted person, there's loads of online resources that you can get yourself involved in. So yeah, I think that's like my major tip really is it's a good idea to get out of the engineering bubble, I think.
Oh, for sure. I've definitely experienced that myself. It was a big realization moment when I actually started working, because you kind of get so caught up in your technical courses that when you get into industry, it's like there's so much more that I didn't consider, like safety and risk and all this other regulatory requirements, and really I think similar to what you were saying, which is exposing yourself to a wider network. I've learnt the most from just having conversations with different people in the business who are not engineers at all, because like you mentioned earlier, I think we get stuck just in our little engineering pool, and then we all get stuck just sharing our work and information that we forget to look out and we forget to see that, you know, this person who might work in accounting, you might say, oh, they probably won't know what's going on with this piece of work I'm doing, but you'd be surprised at how much impact the different areas of the business will have. And I've only really noticed that by having conversations with people in my workplace and just mentioning, oh, I'm doing work for this project or that piece, that area there, and then having them say, oh, did you know that this is going to be happening soon, so you should really consider that, or oh, did you know that it's really important to consider this aspect, and you should come and have a chat. I'm happy to send you resources and help you out there. And then it's just really broadened my understanding that yeah, even though you might be doing something technical, you're affecting a much wider network. It's not just the numbers that are important, it is how they impact on a wider business that is, I think, really critical. That yeah, it's just something that doesn't get taught as much at university.
Yeah, and I think the point here is that we shouldn't rely on that chance conversation that somebody will let us know that, you know, a new legal requirement is happening. We need to put ourselves in those positions when we're actively seeking out the greater knowledge, the greater context. So I think us being proactive in this is a great approach.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that's my next stage is big. Right now it's quite reactive. I am having a lot of these chance encounters, but now that I'm aware of how important they are, the next stage is to, like you mentioned, being proactive and jumping on it and monitoring the news or the market or things like that, so that you can anticipate what's happening next.
Yeah, absolutely. One anecdotal thing that I might share is with Elbaite, our MVP took a lot longer than it's supposed to. It took a whole year. That's not what a skeleton is, right? It took a whole year because we weren't really paying attention to the legal landscape until it was, until it was a bad timing. So what happened is we created this MVP and we were about to release it out to experiment with it and see how it reacts with the real world, right? And then lo and behold, the new law in Australia came about where every crypto exchange in Australia now has to verify each of their users, very much similar like a bank. When you create a bank account, you need to show your driver's license, proof of address, proof of work, proof of occupation. So all of those things, they introduced that to the cryptocurrency industry. So there's this really intense regulatory requirement was put on us all of a sudden because we were not paying attention. So that delayed our launch of the MVP by 6 months. So that was the lesson for us. That's when we were like, okay, we need to be really involved with the legal people. We really need to have mentors in this area. We need to seek out all of all of these information ourselves first, so that we're not in this position again.
Yeah.
So one
absolutely.
anecdotal.
Oh wow, that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, and it was an expensive lesson, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's those lessons that really stick with you. You know, never again, never again.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Speaking of money, we've got our next audience question, which is about one of the bigger unspoken topics in not just the early career industry, but industry in general. Do you know where to start if you want to negotiate a salary? And have you tried negotiating before?
Yeah, so this is probably more relevant, becoming quite relevant to us as we've now progressed 1 year, at least 1 year out of uni. I mean, sure, first year out of uni, we're probably not in the best position to have this conversation, but now we're definitely able to have these conversations.
Oh, nice.
Okay. No, I have no idea where to start. 50%. Okay.
All right. So I've just got another slide here, and with just some statistics from the Australian government about salary negotiation and how important that it can be, because oftentimes a lot of young professionals don't even know that they can negotiate a salary. And I'm going to be the first to put my hand up that I only realized recently that salary negotiation was something that is on the table. I kind of always thought, oh, but like, I'm not that experienced, so I don't think I'm allowed to sort of pitch my ideas. But I'm realizing, listening to people's experiences, that it's something that if you know your worth and your value, it's something that you can definitely push for, especially as you are slowly getting more and more involved in industry and also getting that critical experience. But I personally haven't had to negotiate salary yet. Samira, have you had to have this challenging conversation, and any tips and tricks?
So at my time in IBM, I think I'm still quite early to have that conversation, but I am in the middle of it. So I'm kind of leveraging off all of the learnings that I've had previously. So some of the great tips that I heard, and this is a tip that I heard while I was in one of those events that I spoke about before. So this is a HR event, and in that event they spoke about the fact that, so your contract, so for example, if you're on a grad contract for 1 year, the HR team, they actually expect you to come to them at that 1 year mark or before that 1 year mark. They expect you to come to them with a salary negotiation conversation. So it's not something that you're doing that is out of your right. They are expecting it. And so the other mark that I'll make is, so the longer that you have your contract, so for example, if you've signed a 5-year contract, you kind of know where your salary is going. It'll be in the terms of that sheet. But if it's a shorter one, you're in a position where at that short time to review the contract and to renew another one, you're in a position to negotiate. So when I approached IBM, I did this really funny thing. I wanted a contract that was less than 1 year. And they said, no, it used to be 2 years. So this is a better contract than the 2-year one. So you've got a 1-year contract. I mean, if somebody had told me this during uni, because I would have thought having a 2-year contract is much more to your advantage, but I'm now learning that while you're in your early stages, it's probably better to have those shorter contracts so that you can have those specified gate times that you can negotiate.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, and I'm learning something as well today.
Yeah, so those HR conversations, they don't be afraid of them. They are expecting it. And
Yeah.
I think another comment that I'll make about this is, you know, we might struggle to go, okay, what value do I bring into this company that I'm working in? If you're struggling with that, and so if you feel like your workplace is not giving you skills, then seek skills outside of your workplace and then bring those skills in. And that's how you can increase your value as well. So skills and networks and people, right? Those are also assets of you as a worker that you can bring into your workplace. So networks, I mean, for example, you know, if you've got one of your friends that works at this other firm, right, you can introduce people from that other firm to your company as a potential client. And that's an asset that you have brought in, right? That's your network. So don't sell yourself too short on everything outside of just what you bring in from your day to day, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess I'm kind of sharing some tips that I've gotten from my mentor. So one tip is from me personally, get a mentor. Like I said earlier, they've definitely have had to negotiate their salary at least once before, so they can give you extra tips and tricks on what works well or your presentation style. But some tips that my mentor has given me is that come in prepared. So do some market research to see what is the rough salary of someone with your experience level or your level of skill. So you can go to things like Glassdoor, the Australian Fair Work website, and another website, which I wrote down, and I'm just going to try and find it in my notes real quick. Pay scale, there we go. And you can see what is the type of salary. So you know you're coming in with a number prepared or just a range of number prepared. But also the other most important tip that my mentor gave me is if you are, say, approaching this conversation with your manager, you've worked with your manager already, you know what type of leader they are. So maybe they're a type of leader that values KPIs, meeting KPIs, and they think that is a really critical part. So I would lead your conversation by saying how you have demonstrated that you are able to meet those KPIs with some concrete and also indisputable examples. But at the same time, if your manager is someone who really values team culture and prioritizes that, then understand that that is what their preference is. And instead of saying, I have met this deliverable and this deliverable, instead say, how have you improved your team culture? So it's like these little presentation tips to tailor it to suit the person that you're talking to. Because usually my mentor has said that it has led to favorable outcomes, which is good to hear.
Yeah, and that's always the knowing your audience.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So that pretty much wraps up our workshop from Samira and I. And now I think we've got a couple of minutes for Q&A at the moment. And we've got Prue joining us. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Prue Roche from the Faculty of Engineering, Architecture and IT in the advancement team here at UQ. And I've just been hiding in the background, but would like to facilitate some questions. So we do have a question from Michelle, and she asked probably both of you, how did you find your mentor?
That's a really good question.
Maybe Karen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I found my mentors mainly through my network at work, to be honest. So one of the mentors was a senior engineer who we'd had a few casual conversations together, and then she was lovely and said, did you want to formalize this into some form of mentorship? So that one was one that I got kind of through chance or through luck, and through the virtue of knowing a person who is so willing to offer up their time, which I'm eternally very grateful for. But then I have also another mentor who I approached, and I kind of always looked up to her because she is the type of manager which I hope to be one day in life. Her leadership style and how she works with her team and how she's able to prioritize her work, I aspire to be like that. And so one day I kind of just plucked up the courage to ask and said, do you mind if we go and get a coffee? I'd really like to get some mentorship for you for the reasons that I just mentioned. And I think you'd be surprised at how willing senior people are to share their advice and to help guide younger people, because she was definitely very interested. And it's just a matter of asking, because I think that's what surprised me the most is how open senior people are to sharing. And if they say no, they say no. That's pretty much the worst that can happen. Then I'm going to turn around and say, look, everyone, she's asking for a mentor. And I said no. So I would try to just pluck up the courage if you can and ask, because the worst thing that can happen is they say, I'm sorry, I'm just a bit too busy right now.
Yeah. So my tip is a little bit different, just because when I was looking for mentors, I wasn't in a big organization like IBM or APA. I was kind of on my own. And when I did do the cold reach outs to people that I admired, I was not successful. They were not wanting to talk to me at all, which is totally fine, right? So the way that I overcame that was actually going through mentorship programs. So that means that the mentors are ready and available to mentor someone. So they're already in that mindset and they're willing to participate. So quick Google search on mentorship programs for engineers, you'll find heaps. Not even engineers, maybe just females in technology or just anything in your field. It's really encouraging how this space has grown a lot. So there are a lot of opportunities outside of your organization.
Can I also jump in there and say that for your second last and your final year, we have the Meet a Mentor program, which connects students to alumni, as well as UQ also run the A2A, which is the alumni to alumni mentoring program, where you're able to connect with alumni within your industry and other disciplines as well. And it's a great opportunity. It's almost speed mentoring, so it's a quick coffee here or there, and if you connect with that person, then you can go on to have them as a more formal mentor.
Yeah, I'd grab that opportunity.
Yeah, it's actually on our webpage, so on our UQ alumni webpage, so if you want to jump on there and sign up. We probably only have a time for one quick question, and that's from Belinda. Are you planning on any postgraduate study, for example, an MBA to complement your technical undergraduate degree?
Me personally, I probably will not go through an MBA just because from my understanding of other people that are in an MBA program, it's very similar to the challenges that you go through when you do create your own business. So I think I've already gotten that knowledge, but if I wanted that extra credibility of a degree, maybe I'll consider it, but for the moment I haven't found a need. So I'm okay with my bachelor's at the moment. It's given me enough opportunities for what I want.
And I think for myself, at this stage, I'm definitely interested in pursuing something like an MBA, but I'm still trying to work out, I guess, what is the value of me getting that level of higher education. I haven't seen an opportunity yet. I know it's important, which is why I'm interested, but I'm still waiting to learn a bit more about industry and to learn more about my strengths so that I can sort of see how it is relevant to me, rather than right now I'm interested because I know it's something important. So something a bit more deeper than that. But at this stage, yes, I am considering at some point in my career.
I love some of the answers that other people are giving in the chat, by the way.
That probably brings us to the end. Karen, if you wanted to switch the slide.
All right, so thank you so much to everyone for attending. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any further questions, you can feel free to email it to the UQ Women in Engineering email, and then we'll try our best to get back to you as soon as possible. So all of that information is available on the events website. And just a quick reminder, it was on the previous slide, but we will be sending out a link for some feedback to this session. So if you'd like to participate, we'd always welcome feedback to help improve our future events. And speaking of future events, a quick promo for next week's one, which is targeted towards people during the mid stage of their engineering career. And it is with Bree and Jody, who are going to share their experiences in terms of juggling life changes, big changes in career, and how it all fits into improving their journey for the next stage into the senior leadership periods. So yeah, it's next Wednesday from 12 to 1 at the same time. Great.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Right,
Karen,
thank you
for hosting.
No, thank you so much, Samira. I learned a lot out of that chat, and it's great to hear you speak as always.
Thank you. Thanks, Prue.
Thanks, Karen and Samira.
All right, thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon.